organizing with Sunrise for almost 8 years now. I joined Sunrise a few months after Trump got elected for the first time. So it feels scary and awful to be back in this situation. Um, but I also feel really comforted that I have other Sunrisers. So welcome to this call. Um, and this number of people, we're now at 1.2 thousand people, so 1,200 people on this call, and we're only 4 minutes in. So again, thank you so much for coming. My hope is that today we can together try and channel some of our fear and our rage and our frustration into organizing and into actually being able to stand up for our futures, stand up for the world that we actually deserve together. And I keep seeing these angry and full of resolve, terrified, grateful to everyone who's here, numb but resolute, scared but motivated, speechless, crying. Yeah, when I heard the news yesterday, I spent some time crying as well. Probably a lot of you have as well. Um, we're going to get started in just a minute. I want to go through a little bit of just how to use Zoom. I know probably you guys have been on Zoom a good amount, but just want to go over it so everyone feels able to participate in this webinar. And I really hope that by the end of this call, people can walk out with more hope and a plan for what you can do together and some people who you feel in it with. Okay, so let's go over some housekeeping, some Zoom 101. You can pull up the chat at the bottom of your screen, and you can that's where you can chat everyone. Most people are already doing it. When you're in breakouts, you'll be able to turn your mic on and off. We'll have little breakout rooms throughout the call. And just, there's a 1,200 of us, so stay on mute if you are not actively talking in breakouts. And there's also a way for you to show captions on the bottom, so we can turn on Spanish captions, and there's some instructions around how to do that in the slides. Yeah, right here. Perfect. And wow, 1,300 people now. I'll say, how many people this is their first time coming to something with Sunrise? Put an exclamation point in your chat, in the chat if it's your first time. Okay, wow, so many people. Welcome to all of you. I'll just give a quick overview of what Sunrise is. There's so many exclamation points. I don't even know how many this is. Sunrise is a youth movement fighting to stop the climate crisis and win a Green New Deal. We launched almost 8 years ago, and during the first Trump presidency. And in that time, we made sure that climate became a top priority. We reshaped the Democratic Party. We made climate tied to jobs. We eventually won the biggest ever piece of climate legislation in the US, the Inflation Reduction Act. And we are not going to back down. We are here because we know no matter what, the climate crisis is here. It's real. It's bearing down upon us, and it is going to take every ounce of our courage and our strength and our organizing to face it down. So that's why we're here today. And we have roles for everyone. We're a youth-led movement. Our hubs are full of young people. And we also need you here if you are not young and if you want to support us. So thank you to everyone for coming. And we're basically going to be going over today what the path forward is for how we actually confront the climate crisis and win the world we deserve, win the country we deserve, given Trump's victory. Right. Today, what we are going to go over is we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what happened, and we're going to do a little emotional check-in as well, just share how we're feeling with each other. I feel like one of the best things that helps me in these moments is just being in community, and we want to do that with each other tonight. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how did we get here? Why, how are we facing this huge, terrifying Trump victory, and what does it actually mean? And then we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about, okay, what is our way out? How do we actually solve this? How do we stop the climate crisis? How do we build the amount of power we need to win? And we'll end with some concrete things that everyone can do. So everyone should be walking out of here with a real thing that they can do that will make you feel better, that will make a real difference in the world. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next hour and 15 minutes or so. And with that, I think I am going to pass it to Amalia. Again, thank you all for coming.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amalia. I use she, her pronouns. I live in New York, but I'm in Philly right now. Um, and it's really, really lovely to be on a call with 1.5 thousand people tonight. It's been a really hard day, and it's it's really hopeful and it's inspiring to see so many people here. Okay, so what happened? Guys, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Donald Trump has won the presidency and the popular vote. And he might have a Republican Congress that will embolden him to pass the worst versions of his agenda. This is incredibly dangerous. Trump has laid out an extremist agenda that could shake the foundation of our democratic system. He has said that he won't leave office, will dismantle government institutions like the Environmental Protection Agency, and has said he'll use the military to go after, deport, and even kill people who dissent. We might well be sliding into a dictatorship. If Republicans win Congress, he can give out handouts to corporate billionaires while pretending to fight for working people. He can pass draconian border and abortion policies and pack the Supreme Court. And he will be president for 4 of the 6 years we have left to stop the climate crisis. This means rolling back our progress on renewable energy. It means okaying hundreds of oil and gas projects. It can mean we blow past 2 degrees Celsius of warming and hit major irreversible climate tipping points. Okay, a lot has happened. Um, could I get folks to drop like one word each in the chat about how you're feeling about what has happened over the last 24 hours? Furious, denial, angry, scared. Yeah, disappointed. I'm feeling so disappointed in the Democratic Party and the institutions and the systems that run our country. Yeah. I don't say any of this to paralyze us. And I actually believe that this moment holds opportunity and hope and the possibility of tremendous change. We saw in the first Trump administration that when millions of people took action and organized, we stopped some of Trump's worst policies. We forced him to walk back his plans for a Muslim ban. We defeated his repeal of Obamacare in Congress. Sunrise launched in 2017, months after Trump's first election. We were called Sunrise because of a belief that even in dark times, light returns. In the first Trump years, we helped launch the Squad, put the Green New Deal on the map, and radically changed what was politically possible. And this time, we'll do it bigger and we'll do it bolder. History shows us that ordinary people, united by the millions, can topple dictators and change the course of history. Through mass civil disobedience that gives people the power, no choice but to say yes to our demands. That's why we're launching a 4-year strategy to build up to mass student strikes in 2027 and a general strike in 2028. The goal is to organize millions of people and shift what's politically possible. We'll make it so that whoever is president in 2029 will enact bold action to stop the climate crisis and remake our economy and our politics to work for all of us. We'll get into the details of our plan soon. But first, I do want to start by just grounding us in these stakes and what it means to organize in this moment. So I'm going to pass it over to Layla to tell a story about what it means to organize in moments of pain and despair.
I was 16 years old when I woke up one day in my house and my mom, before school, told me some really difficult news. I remember her coming into my room. She never wakes me up like that. And she told me that the night before in our sleep, the mosque in our hometown of 50,000 people had been burned down in an arson. And she told me this story. She told me this really real fact as calmly as she could, but with fear in her eyes and fear on her face. I will not forget that look ever. I will not forget the way she told me there was nothing left, just ashes. And her looking at the floor, like stunned, not knowing what to say to me, but not wanting to make me scared. And despite the fact that there were arson threats on this place, despite the fact that there were bullet holes in the sign from people who drove by with guns, despite the fact that protesters came outside the temporary mosque to make my dad feel like scared, her and my dad came together with their community and rebuilt that mosque. And I learned from her example that in the face of destruction, of white supremacy, of violence, even in the deepest of Trump country, even in the deepest red place where we didn't belong, where we looked different than everybody else, I learned from her that it doesn't matter. We have to have each other's backs and fight for our community. And even if we're scared, we're building a path as we walk it every day. In 2020, I was faced with another moment of panic and uncertainty. I was faced with a pandemic. I moved back to my hometown because my future felt upended from me. And it was, again, a place that I really didn't want to be in, but I couldn't leave my family. But I had a friend, Erin, who was part of this amazing organization 2 hours away from my hometown in Kansas City. She was part of KC Tenants, a group that was organizing poor and working class tenants to stop evictions in a pandemic. And she told me, Layla, we need you. You really need to come to KC. And so I moved to Kansas City and I was looking for a movement home and I found Sunrise. And I committed to building a movement here. I committed to building a cross-race, cross-class movement of people. And I know there are people on this call. I know there's Aaron, Mehreen, Aaron, Kaylee, Caitlin. I know there's so many of y'all, Joy, people in my hometown. And we have, in over 3 years, over doubled the size of our hub. We did that in the face of a pandemic and Trump. We did that in the face of so much uncertainty, of Zoom calls and meetings, not knowing if the campaign we were picking was right, not knowing if the action we were going to do was going to change anything. But we still did it and we're still here. And each of us right now, everyone on this call is facing a similar challenge. We have spent months protesting a genocide. We have spent weeks knocking doors, making phone calls, even when it was hard, even when we didn't love this candidate. Right? We have faced that similar challenge, and now we've hit a moment where we don't know what's going to come next, and we're scared. I'm scared. I'm scared to be even here telling you my story, and I'm still standing up here doing it because I need every single person on this call to join this movement, to fight for us, to fight for people like my parents and my cousins in Joplin, Missouri, and all the people in New York City and LA, coast to coast. We have to come together. And so on this call, we're going to ask you, will you join this movement? Will you and all your fellow students in your school walk out this week to demand that the Democratic Party fight for us and fight for our futures? And will you host a mass call to build the movement where you live? Because we can't do it with just the people on this call. We have to do it with thousands of more people. And I believe in us. I believe in each and every one of you. I know we can do it. And I'm really inviting you. This is your moment to step in with me, to step in with everyone here. Thank you.
Thanks, Layla. Let's get some love for Layla in the chat. It was coming through the whole time, Layla. I hope you get to go back and read the lovely comments that people are putting in as you were telling your story. I really felt it when you're talking about the resiliency of your parents and your community when they decided to rebuild the mosque. And I'm thinking about how I need to hold that feeling with me and your parents and your community in my heart over the next 4 years. I'm going to move us into some breakouts, and we're going to get to share a little bit more about us and how we're feeling. So the prompts are up on the screen, your name, your pronouns, where you're calling in from, What's happening in your community? Who are you connected to and building with? How do you feel? And our tech folks are going to open up those breakouts and we'll be in there for a few minutes. And then we'll come back and start talking about our plan.
Okay, to everyone still here, you can go ahead and try and join a breakout. If you don't know how to join a breakout, we can help you out with that. And if you, for some reason, can't join a breakout, just hold tight for 5 minutes and we'll all come back together. Great. And if you don't need, if you can't join a breakout, if you only have audio or whatever, that's fine. To join a breakout, you should be able to go down to the bottom of your screen and there's 3 dots at the bottom where it says more. If you click more, then there's a little like window emoji or like window symbol, I guess. And it should say breakout rooms next to it.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so a few years ago, we all remember 2020. Progressives were on the rise, and that's thanks to groups like Sunrise who were able to really bring so many issues to the forefront. We all remember, Bernie's campaign, but even beyond just Bernie, we remember Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, universal basic income, all these issues that we see that are still today so popular and common sense were actually being reflected by people running for office. But now we've seen the biggest rightward shift we've seen in decades in this election. So how did this happen? Let's hit the next slide and let's talk about how we have to look at the last 40 years of US politics and the very structure of our democracy. Wealth inequality has reached record high levels in the last 40 years. The top 1% of this country owns way more than poor and working class people. That's just one way that the US politics has shifted. Next slide, please. We've also seen a destruction of public services, of our community spaces, of third spaces getting co-opted. We've seen this by, for example, schools becoming privatized. My transit service in my city is becoming privatized and totally defunded. We've seen public housing become privatized. The rent is too damn high, as our tenant organizers would say. And this is just untenable for everyday people. Let's hit the next slide and talk about the ecological collapse. This is big oil's climate crisis. I say that because the people causing Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton, Category 5 hurricanes, fires, floods, they have names and addresses. And it's only a few people who are deciding to burn our planet for their own profit. So we're also seeing total, like how even these disasters divide us as communities. But also at the bedrock of everything is how the rules of the game are made. Let's go to the next slide and talk about how we have, as a country, a uniquely unresponsive democracy. More than almost any other country in the world, the US democratic system was designed to make sure that elites could have their way, even if masses of people disagreed with them, so that big change couldn't happen fast. That's why we have outdated mechanisms like the Senate, the filibuster, the Electoral College. That's why someone like Joe Manchin can single-handedly stand in the way of common sense policies. And it makes me really freaking mad. It makes me mad that this one man can do this when he himself is a coal baron. And the reason why we all know is to protect property and profits for the few, while the rest of us, especially Black, Latine, poor working class people, are going to get the short end of the stick. And naturally, people see all of this. It's happening to them. They can't afford to put food on their table, they can't afford a roof over their head. They feel lonely and powerless, unable to afford their basic needs. They're looking for someone to blame. And across the board, people in this country want change. And that's where the mainstream Democratic Party has failed us. I want to say that again. The mainstream Democratic Party has failed us and failed to give people an answer. Let's go to the next slide and yeah, talk more about this. The Democratic Party could have risen to the occasion. They could have run on anti-war, anti-corporate, pro-working class issues, but instead they ran as an establishment party. And that's why we have situations like here in Missouri, where we reversed an abortion ban, we protected a $15 minimum wage and paid sick leave, but we still voted for Trump. Why is that? It's because the Democratic Party did not run on an agenda that would actually be popular with poor and working class people across race and class. And instead, they just ran on not being Trump. They ran as an establishment party when people were sick of the establishment, and that left the door wide open for Trumpism. Trump was able to blame immigrants, Black people, the left, trans people, and the Democratic Party for people's problems. And now I don't want to underestimate the role that racism and sexism played in these results, but I am saying that a lot of the voters who voted for Trump, they're voters who could be fighting for livable wages, a democracy that works for all of us, and a future to look forward to. Those are people we actually really need on our side and want to be on our side, but cannot go behind the Democratic Party as it is today. So I want to hear from y'all. How are people feeling about Trump and the far right? How are you feeling about the Democratic establishment? I'm definitely seeing a lot of people fired up about this section. The fact that, yeah, Democrats didn't fight for us. The media won't talk about it that way. And I know they're going to be out here blaming young people. They're going to be out here blaming people who dissented against the genocide. But we know the truth. We know it's because they are really losing badly. All right, I get too heated. I definitely could take up the whole call. So I'm gonna pass it over to Aru to ground us in what we're fighting for and how we're gonna do differently.
Thank you, Layla, so much. I think that the thing that I find hopeful about what you said is that sometimes there's this narrative of like, oh, the country's just too racist or too sexist and like it's just too far gone. And what you said makes me feel hopeful that actually there is a version of this country that can vote for really progressive policies that we can fight for everyone and that we can stop climate change. We can have the world and the country that we deserve. So that's one of the things I'm taking away from what you shared. Um, I want to talk a little bit about, okay, things are pretty bad. What does the next few years actually look like to get us out of this crisis? And in order to do that, I want to just zoom out for a second. The climate crisis is looming down upon us, and we need to be done with tinkering around the edges and settling for half measures. And I say this as someone who fought so hard for the Inflation Reduction Act, who fought so hard for every small win that we got, but it is not enough. We are not on track to stop the climate crisis at the speed and scale that we require. And we are in this awful situation where Trump is in office and he is likely going to be in office for the next 4 years. So there are two things we need to do. One, we need to make sure that those 4 years are not wasted. But two, we also need to make sure that when he leaves office, we are ready to pass some of the boldest climate legislation that we have ever seen, and not only pass it once, but usher in a new political era. So how do we actually get there? We need to make sure that whoever enters office that year has the mandate to do whatever is needed to fix our political system and pass ambitious legislation. And history has shown us that there is one clear way to do that, through mass non-cooperation. And someone already mentioned this. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but the United Auto Workers has called for a general strike. in May of 2028. And a general strike, if you don't know, is when the workers all across the country decide to stop working, demanding something. They've aligned their contracts to expire then, and they've called for other unions to do the same. And this hasn't happened in the US. This could be absolutely historic. And young people have always been on the forefront of resisting authoritarianism and defending our rights. We are willing to do what's necessary when others are too scared. We are future workers, we are future citizens, and we will use that leverage to our advantage. So here's the plan. And I'm going to lay out the plan, and I want to tell you, this is not saying that we don't escalate until 2028. This is saying that we hit our peak that ushers in a new political era for this country in 2028. So let me lay it out. In 2027, we are going to go on mass student strikes. In high schools, in middle schools, in colleges across the country, we will walk out of class. We will take over our campuses. We will chart a new path forward. At the same time, cities and towns all across the country will be escalating locally, demanding climate action on the scale of the crisis. We will make it clear that the future of this country will not accept milquetoast climate policies, and we will shape the presidential primary so that every single candidate who is even considering running has to prove themselves to our generation. Then in 2028, we will join forces with labor unions for a wave of school and worker strikes, unlike any that we have seen in our lifetimes. Like I said, the UAW has called for a general strike with millions of workers and students striking together. We will demand structural reforms to our political system so that it is not run by corporations, so that it is actually responsive to the pressure of everyday people. We will extract concessions from Trump. We will make sure that whoever enters the presidency has a mandate to stop the climate crisis, to take on corporate power, and to build a world that works for all of us. And I'm seeing a lot of people be like, midterms. Yes, we are thinking about the midterms. We are seeing what is happening with the House elections to figure out what role the midterms plays. And if you're interested in that, join Sunrise. This is all part of the plan. And then all of that leads to 2029. We usher in a new era of American politics. With a threat of mass disruption from labor and students, a new administration will be racing to stop the climate crisis and build a world that works for all of us. We can actually stop the worst effects of climate change. We can make sure that every person has a family-sustaining wage, affordable healthcare, safe housing, and a democracy that works for everyone. And I want to say, this is a long shot. Sometimes I feel a little nervous to say it to people because it almost feels I'm going to be called naive and dumb and unrealistic. But you know what? Young people have been told that throughout history. This has never been done before, but everything is on the line right now. And we are in a planetary emergency, and that means that history is in our hands and it is ours to shape. Okay. How are y'all feeling hearing that vision? I hear someone say this is wild and extreme, and I'm all for making it work. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I'm like, oh my God, this is a moonshot. It feels crazy, but we're in a unprecedented moment, and that feels like we need an unprecedented plan for it. Doubtful. That's real. Honestly, if you weren't feeling doubtful, I'm like, you got to have a little bit of doubt in there. It's a wild plan, but we have to try. This will not, yeah, I don't want a 2020 primary repeat. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to build up a huge amount of mass power. How do we implement it on a large scale? It's gonna take a lot of organizing. Okay, I fuck it, we ball. Yeah, totally. Okay. I am going to keep moving, and one of the key themes that I am seeing here is why are we waiting till 2028? And the first thing I'll say is that we are definitely not waiting till 2028. But that's the level that we think we can actually reach like full student and general strike levels by. I think we can win a lot before then. But I want to share a little bit about the strategy, the three-pronged strategy that we think we will need to employ in order to get there. So number one, we want to build up the muscle of non-cooperation. Now, I don't know if y'all are on Twitter. Sometimes I'm on Twitter a little too much. And every so often you just hear someone go, why don't we just do a general strike? And I think we got to be real that this is really hard to do. It's going to take huge levels of infrastructure, of organizing. It takes discipline. And I want to be real that it's not going to be easy. And that means that for the next several years, we are going to need to build up the muscle, the discipline to get that. Yeah, we're not waiting for 2028, we're building to 2028. Thanks, Caleb, for saying that. So that's going to take time. We're going to do it over and over and over again. We're going to take direct action. We're going to go on student strikes. We're going to take over our campuses. We're going to repeat, 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 until you get strong by going to the gym. And we're going to use these actions to actually shift the public and demand change from politicians of both parties. Another part of this, I saw someone say, what are our relationships with labor unions? This is a key part. We already have some relationships with labor unions. We definitely need to build them stronger. And that is something all of our hubs will be doing. It's something I hope all of you will be doing in this plan. Part number two, is that we actually want to use climate to peel off a part of the MAGA coalition so we can defeat Trumpism in 2026 in the midterms and in 2028. The reality is that Trump won with the popular vote, but his climate policies are not popular. People want him to take climate action. And if we raise the urgency of climate change, we can actually divide the MAGA coalition and bring them into people, like to a vision and an agenda that works for everyday working people. And we can do that by making Trump's climate and environmental rollbacks backfire on him. When he tries to repeal green jobs programs or clean water protections, we will be there to make sure millions of people see him for what he is. He is a corporate shill who is doing favors for his billionaire donors and putting millions of our lives at risk. Trump is not a working class champion. Trump is not anti-establishment, and we can expose that through the climate crisis. That also means we need to effectively connect climate to people's everyday lives. Climate is not in the future. Climate is not abstract. Climate is an issue that touches all of us. It means talking with people across race and class. It means talking about how climate affects Black and brown and working class communities. So that's the work we're going to do to actually make clear that we can divide the MAGA coalition. And then the part number three is that we're going to shape the Democratic Party into a force that will take on our broken democracy and tackle the climate crisis with the force we need. And I want to say something about this because frankly, right now, I am feeling awful about the Democratic Party. I have such low trust about the Democratic Party. I'm pissed at them. And something I'm reminding myself of right now is that parties are not monoliths. They are arenas of struggle, and they change. Trump and the MAGA right changed the Republican Party in huge ways in the last 8 years. We can do that to the Democratic Party. And now is the time to do it because right now, maybe like never before, or at least certainly not for many years, the Democratic Party is in shambles. They don't know why they lost, and they don't have a theory of how to win. And that means there's an opening for us to actually make the case for how they can win with progressive anti-corporate policies that put working people at the center of their politics. With Trump in office and with a presidential primary in 2028, we have a huge opportunity to reshape the party to actually be for working people. Okay, I'm going to pause there. And I want people to put in the chat what part of the strategy you're most excited about. Strike, strike, strike. Okay, maybe that was a silly question. Strike. Okay. Great. Part where we win. Centering students. This is amazing. Splitting MAGA. Oh, amazing. I'm feeling kind of fired up right now. It makes me feel hopeful. I was like almost crying at the beginning of this call, so it feels really good. The speed of this chat just makes me feel energized. And I am going to pass it to Ketis to talk about what this means for what we do literally right now and how we kick this off.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ketis Gurma. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm incredibly heartfelt and hopeful about being on a call with so many people right now, ready and hungry to fight for the world they need and they know they deserve. For this next bit, I'm going to be chatting about what's going to happen from today, day dot, to January 20th, Election Day, Inauguration Day, and the ways that you can organize. But before I want to get into it, the first thing I want to say is I'm going to make asks of you. And for a moment, you might be thinking, that's for someone else on this call. That's for the other 1,399 people to do and not for me. And I want to challenge you on that. I want to invite you into your power. I want to invite you into fighting for the world that you deserve. I want to invite you into organizing and movement building and community. I want to invite you into fighting for the liberation that you and I both deserve. And it's going to start on this call, and it's going to continue for days and weeks and months and years. And one day you're going to turn back and you might think about this Zoom call with 1,400 strangers or 1,400 family members, depending on how you define it. And you might think to yourself, that's the day that I leaped. That's the day that I picked myself and my family and my community. And I'm so excited to have you here. And I'm so excited to step in this with you. And so let's jump in. From this day forward, we're going to be in a fight for the world that we deserve. But before that, I want to talk about when Sunrise launched. Sunrise launched in 2017 in the first Trump years. We launched in a moment in time where the world was lost, in a moment in time where the world did not know what we were going to get, about what the president at that time was going to do from day moment, and we continue to organize. We are called Sunrise because we believe that in dark times, light can return. And in this moment in time, we might be in the darkest of days, at the darkest of nights, and dawn is still coming. And in those first years, we launched the squad. We put the Green New Deal on the map. We put sit-ins and actions. We upset a lot of Democrats, and we changed what is possible in this country. And after many years, we passed the first substantial federal climate bill, and we're here to do it again. And so I want you to lean into the despair you might be feeling and the heartache that you might be feeling, and also recognize and know that we've done great things before, and we can do them again. All right, next slide, please. It begins this Friday. It begins with student walkouts. It begins with high schoolers, middle schoolers, and college students stepping out of their offices and classrooms and hallways and saying that this is not normal and this is not acceptable. It says that we have 6 years to stop the climate crisis, and we're going to make damn sure to make them incredibly 4 years for Donald Trump in office. It means people on this call and a couple of minutes hearing from Ada talk to you about how you can sign up to do a student walkout and doing the damn thing in a matter of a day and a half. And I want you to know that you're fully capable of doing that. And in that moment, we're going to be calling on the Democratic Party and the politicians that put us in this mess to get their house on fucking order and to build or step aside. After that, we're going to host mass meetings. That's the following week. Folks in their community hubs and beyond are going to be pulling their communities together to strategize, to get ready for a general strike, and to start doing the building from block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, until we radically change everything about this country, until we build it into the world that we know that we deserve. Beyond that point, we will take action in DC. We will descend on the Capitol. We will face to face, face to face, we will face the people that have put us in this position. We will demand the world that we deserve, and we will continue to fight. And then after that, those actions will continue in the towns and communities across this country. And then we'll come back together and host another round of trainings. And in those trainings, we will launch a pledge to fight for all of us, a pledge that demands that folks that want to be our next president, folks that want to be our senators and congresspeople, folks who want to be our city council members, show up and show out for climate action, for democracy reform, for ending the corporate control of our government and our communities, for a world that is bright and bold and a Green New Deal today and for decades to come. And so, in this moment, some links are going to be dropped into the chat. They're going to be sign-up links to sign up for school walkouts this Friday and to host mass meetings. And I'm going to call on you to fill out that form. I want you to fill out that form even if you're like, I only think 20% of me could do this. I want you to only fill out that form if you're like, wow, I don't even think there's any chance in hell that I could put on a school walkout in a day and a half. And I want you to lean in and fill out that form. I want you to lean into your power and to the hope that you felt on this call. I want you to lean into the vision that Aru painted for you. I want you to lean into the story that Layla told you. And next, I want you to hear this story and pitch from Ada. Ada, take it away.
Wait, can y'all hear me? Okay. Hi. My name is Ada. I am 18 years old and I graduated high school a year early to organize full time with Sunrise. I currently run our high school and college organizing program. And I have spent the past week canvassing in North Carolina, which was just hit really hard by Hurricane Helene, and have witnessed just like insane amounts of destruction from the climate crisis. And I'm not gonna lie, y'all, I am so exhausted. I slept from 5 a.m. to like 9 a.m. today. Um, and I'm really pissed off at the Democratic Party and this system that has failed us and failed our generation over and over again when we have 6 years to stop the climate crisis. And I would not be here if I didn't truly believe that organizing can work. I want to say that throughout history, y'all, social movements have been led by students. I think about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the Civil Rights Movement, to March for Our Lives, to the encampments on college campuses for Palestine last spring. Student movements have and will continue to fundamentally transform our politics. And I want to say that this system, right, this system that we live in, it cannot keep screwing us over if we don't let it. And as students, our schools are the most powerful leverage that we have in the fight against fascism and the fight against the climate crisis, because leaders are relying on us to sit in class and keep doing our algebra homework and keep sitting there with our heads down, letting this happen to us, because that is exactly how they maintain the status quo. And that is exactly how the Democratic Party continues to be bought out and fail us. Okay. And we have a choice to make, right? Like we can put our heads down in this moment, or we can tell politicians in both parties and everywhere that our generation won't stand for it. We are not going to be their political pawns anymore. And so I'm asking you all to walk out with me on Friday, and maybe again in the days and weeks that follow. I know that planning a walkout can feel really scary if you've never done it before. But like Kita said, I really want to encourage you to sign up. Even if you think there's just a tiny part of you that could do this. I have pulled walkouts together in a matter of days. A lot of other folks on this call have too. And we are going to be there to support you every step of the way. We have guides, we have coaches, we have a group chat where everyone is going to be together sharing advice. But y'all, this is only going to work if we all do it together. Because one school doing a walkout might not change the course of American politics, but hundreds of schools, it will. And so if you're a student, I want you to come to my breakout and I want you to sign up. Thanks.
Thank you, Ada. Okay, all right, just to reiterate again, if you are a student, college, high school, middle school, I want you to fill out that smbmt.org walkout link. And if you're like, wow, I'm a young person, but I am not currently a student, I want you to fill out the mass meeting form. And so if you're a student, you should be filling out the walkout form. And if you are not a student, I want you to fill out the mass meeting form. And so take a moment to fill it out. And once again, you don't have to be 100% committed to launching a walkout in the next day and a half. If you even have a couple of questions, I want you to take a moment and to fill out that form. And if you are 35 and plus, don't you worry, I will have a pitch for you as well. And so I want to give you a moment to click those links that have been dropped in the chat a couple of times and fill it out. And as we're doing that, maybe I'll tell you a tad bit around when I joined the movement. So as I said before, my name is Ketis. I joined Sunrise in 2020 during the pandemic. And like a lot of moments in Sunrise, it was around the uprisings, and we were looking to see how we could build liberation for Black people and all of us collectively. And I remember the hub coordinator at the time, his name is Sunny, pitching me on joining the hub. And I remember being sort of passive and not interested in being like, oh, I don't know if this is quite for me. But at one of the protests, Sunny told me about why he was organizing with Sunrise and what the climate crisis meant to him. And so I joined the Dallas Hub. And from that moment on, I continued to organize and build the world that I wanted with my friends. And so if you feel called into any degree of organizing, I want you to go ahead and click those links. Finally, as you're clicking those links, we're going to be setting up some breakout rooms. The breakout rooms are going to be three different options. There's going to be one option if you're a student who is doing some sort of strike or is interested in a strike. There's going to be one for folks who are interested in hosting a mass meeting in the next week or two. So that one's for young people. And if you're one of those folks who's 35 plus and you're a supporter of our movement, we are a movement of young people, we still think there's a place for you to plug in. So there's going to be three different breakout rooms that are going to be open, and there'll be folks in there to assist you. And these breakouts are going to be open for about 15 minutes. So first thing first, fill out those forms that have been dropped in the chat a couple of times, and then join the breakout that is relevant to you. And finally, the breakout button is the window emoji at the very bottom of your screen. If you are on the app, click it and select the room you're interested in joining.
Hey y'all, you're about to get to those breakouts. I am looking at the back end of these forms and I see 52 mass meetings and 11 walkouts, and we have over 1,000 people on this call, and I bet we can get higher than that. So let's see whether when we come back, we can get to 100 mass meetings and maybe 25, maybe 30 walkouts.
We now have 39 walkouts.
Oh,
actually.
wow. Whoops, I was late. Let's put that goal higher. Ada, how many walkouts do you think we can get to?
50.
Okay, let's see if we can get to 50 walkouts. Oh, 100. Someone says 100. Let's see if we can get to 100 walkouts. There are a lot of us on this call. Okay,
We
go to
have
the
41 right now.
back. And for people who are wondering what a mass meeting is, this is basically a way for us to invite the people in our community into this plan to win, give them a direction to move in, give them some light training on what to do, and then they'll be able to take action together, whether that means going to DC, whether that means taking action locally. It's a way to invite people in and prepare for taking action together. And if you're over 35, or if you don't consider yourself young, to go ahead and join the supporters breakout because we need you there.
So if you haven't yet, please go to your breakout room that corresponds for you. There's 500 folks yet who have yet to pick their breakout room. Thank you.
Breakout room is the emoji that looks like a window at the bottom of your screen. And so if you click it, you'll get an option to join those three different.
And the thing that I'm trying to remember is that even though these days ahead might be dark and difficult, that we all have immense courage inside of us. And there's a way in which seeing all of you makes me want to be the best version of myself, the most courageous, brave version of myself. And I think that's what movements do. They pull us to be best versions of ourselves, and that's how we change the world together. Thank you, everyone. And if you want extra coaching, if you want to talk through your actions, we will hang out here a little while and you can hop right back in those breakouts. So if you were in the middle of asking questions in your breakout, hang out with us. We got you.